Hi, everybody. Steve Dangle here. Welcome to Sportsnet's YouTube channel. And this is going to be a little different. Usually I'd be saying, hey, I'm about to do the Stanley Cup Playoff bracket challenge, whatever predictor with Justin Bourne here to my left or right. I'm not sure. I'm not the one managing all the screens. I'm just the yelly, talky guy. But it's not exactly a bracket this year, is it, Justin?
I don't know what it is. It's a soup. It's
Yeah,
just a soup, and we're going to pick out ingredients and talk about the ingredients individually because it's all kind of a mishmash here.
there's aspects of it I like, aspects of it I don't. So basically, there's 4 teams in each conference that get a bye, kind of. They get a bye in that they're guaranteed to make the legitimate playoffs. So this first round out of 5 is called the play-ins, let's say. So the top 4 teams each get a bye, but they're going to be playing against each other to reseed. I'm actually not sure how much I like that they get reseeded, but the teams that play in get reseeded as we move along, which I actually do like. Like, for example, I saw an early suggestion for how these playoffs are going to work, that the winner of the Leafs versus Blue Jackets would arbitrarily play the number 1 seed in the East. Well, theoretically, the Leafs could be the top team out of the East that makes it out of the play-ins, right? They're number 8, so the number 10 team, 11, 12 could also make it. Why are they arbitrarily playing the first? So I like the fact that there's reseeding in there. There's going to be a lot of explaining going on in this, but I think number 1, before we start picking winners and losers here, I think it's important to revisit the trade deadline a little bit, because that was February 24th, which is a lifetime ago.
Yeah, no, that's, we mentioned a soup off the top because it's kind of like, all right, who's on what team? Before we came on, you're like, oh, Andre Kasha, Boston, that's a thing. And then it's like, oh, Andre Kasha maybe has COVID. So not exactly sure what's happening there. So there's uncertainty on those fronts. The reseeding thing adds some complication, right? How that works. It's pretty self-explanatory. The teams are reseeded based on their in-season win percentages, which sounds more complex than it is. But there's just a lot of moving parts. So yes, I agree. Let's take it from the top. Let's talk about the trade deadline, what changed there, and then we'll dive into how that affects the play-in rounds.
Sure. So there were a few themes to the trade deadline. Obviously, players start getting moved well before the deadline. That's been the trend of the last few years. Brendan Dillon, for example, going to the Washington Capitals on the back end, and that was about a week ahead of time. Dylan DeMello, a little move going to the Winnipeg Jets, and that seemed to make some sense. Alec Martinez going from the LA Kings to the Vegas Golden Knights. But what I noticed about all this is there were a couple of years where first-round picks were sacred. The teams just decided, nope, we're not moving them anymore. Screw all that. And then I don't know if it was maybe the St. Louis Blues going from last to first, making everyone decide that there is no tomorrow. There were a number of first-round picks that moved at the trade deadline, and one of them was Andre Kasha, but it was a little bit more complicated than that. So the Bruins get Andre Kasha. The Ducks got David Backes, Axel Anderson, and a 2020 first-round pick. You like what Kasha brings to the Bruins?
Yeah, definitely. He's some
If he plays?
right. Yeah, he's some depth scoring that they could need. They rely so heavily on that top line. So nice to add some depth scoring for them. He was another name. I think off the top we mentioned Barclay Goodrow. Was that the other firster?
That was a stunning trade, because I was looking at this and I remember it happening at the time, and I still can't believe it. So the trade was the San Jose Sharks get Anthony Greco and a 2020 first-round pick, which, by the way, they don't have their own 2020 first-round pick. They give it to Ottawa, and it's currently the 3rd overall pick in exchange for a 2020 third-rounder and Barclay Goodrow going to the Tampa Bay Lightning. For reference, Barclay Goodrow this year with the San Jose Sharks had 8 goals, 16 assists for 24 points in 62 games. And in his 8 games with the Lightning, he had 17 penalty minutes and 0 goals, 2 assists.
But, that was the thing that last year with Tampa getting swept in the first round, they didn't have that grit. They didn't have that toughness, that type of player. So they went and get that final piece to the puzzle, and then there almost wasn't a puzzle to be a part of. So I think they're among the teams who are most happy to see this season come back, because if you make that deal and you don't even get to see it through, I don't even know what the NHL does at that point.
Carolina really kicked the door down towards the end of the deadline there. They acquired Sami Vatanen from the Devils. They got Brady Shea from the New York Rangers, who are in these play-ins or whatever you call it, and that was for a 2020 first-round pick. Now, Carolina has a few, so we're still figuring out which pick that's going to be. And a giant splash for the New York Islanders as well. Or no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. The Hurricanes also got Vincent Trocheck from the Panthers, who are in the play-ins. And the other first-round pick trade that I wanted to mention was the Islanders getting Jean-Gabriel Pageau from the Sens for a conditional first, a second, and a conditional third.
Dogs are friends with cats. The world's upside down. Everything's happening. But it is good to remember just where we left off. This is a nice refresher before I predict who's going to beat who. It's nice to know who's on what team.
And a few older faces switching teams too and inserted into huge rivalries. Ilya Kovalchuk is on the Caps.
Is he? Yeah. No.
Patrick Marleau's on the Penguins.
Yeah.
Andreas Athanasiou and Tyler Ennis and Mike Green were big gets for the Edmonton Oilers. Mike Green has already backed out of the return to play. So I think that was enough of a refresher. Oh, and also, can anyone watching this right now without cheating tell me who Robin Lehner plays for?
I need like the Galifianakis gif with all the math numbers swirling through the air and me just trying to process everything that's happening.
He was traded to the Leafs
yes.
for a hot minute and then sent from Chicago to the Leafs to the Vegas Golden Knights. So all of a sudden, the Vegas Golden Knights have this tandem of Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Lehner.
And Lehner was 3-0 there, like a 9.6 save percentage. Yeah.
Unreal.
So, very relevant part of the conversation we're about to have.
Right. So we should maybe then talk about the teams involved in the play-ins that are the guaranteed 1 through 4 seeds. We just don't know exactly where they're going to fall. So in no particular order, I'm going to screw up my own notes just so you don't know who I'm picking yet. In no particular order, in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Bruins are in there, the Tampa Bay Lightning are in there, the Washington Capitals are in there, and the Philadelphia Flyers are in there. In the West, the Colorado Avalanche, the Dallas Stars, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the St. Louis Blues. So I guess we should start by seeding those teams 1 to 4. They're basically going to play a round robin style against each other. The number 1 team getting ripped off there is Boston because
awful.
No one was going to catch them. I want to say the Lightning were 8 points back or something like that. The Boston could lose every game in this round robin. Tampa could win them all. It still wouldn't make up the points. But, oh well, welcome to 2020. A thing happened. We're making the best of it. So who do you have 1 through 4 in the East?
Well, so we had Burke on Hockey Central. He's been on Hockey Central throughout all this pause. And going into the draft, he was like, what's going to happen is one of those placeholder cards is going to win the draft because it's 2020 and complete madness and chaos happens. So exactly like the worst, most unlikely shouldn't happen thing happens. So when I did this, I'm just flipping the seats. Entirely flipping the seeds because Boston deserves to be the 1 seed. They're now the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 is 4, 3, 2, 1 for me. I'm just flipping them because that's just how this works. There's no justice for anyone. Chaos for everyone. Enjoy.
So you flipped them and sorry, but can you say so? Boston is 4.
Yes.
Who's 3?
So right now I have the 1 seed is Philly, the 2 seed is Tampa, the 3 is Washington, and Boston is the 4 seed for me.
Just because flip it, who cares?
Flip it. What are we talking about anyway? They're playing 3 random games. We don't know who's healthy, who's not playing. They haven't played in 4 months. To me, put these 4 teams in a rock tumbler and pull them out at random. That's the seeds. I don't think the games are going to tell us too much.
All right. I have – it's similar to yours. I didn't quite flip it. I still have Washington finishing as the 4 seed. I don't know. I think the other 3 teams in there are really, really good, and Washington was just my least – favorite out of them. It's nothing against them, really. Tampa Bay, I have at number 3 They were the number 2 seed, I believe, and I don't think we're in a playoff spot at like the beginning of December and just went on this ridiculous heater. They were one of the top 5 teams in the league, definitely post-Christmas. But there's just been a weird stink, just a weird smell around them over this offseason. And some of the players may or may not have contracted something. And Steven Stamkos tweeting some
jet ski video, though.
But they had the jet. But that was months ago. That was COVID 20 years ago.
I honestly, it could have been last summer. I don't even know. I have no concept of time.
Yeah, they made that jet ski video and then went on and played Felix Potvin and the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 1993 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Yeah. So there's a weird stink about them. I'm not sure how stoked they are to be even involved in this. So they're my number 3. Boston, I have as my number 2. They should be my undisputed number 1, but there's a couple giant chunks of their team, Kasha, and there's been some mystery around David Pastrnak as well. I just can't confidently make them my number 1. So I'm going to make my number 1 team, one of the hottest teams heading into all this nonsense. They're gritty, they're fast. I like their skill. I like what they bring as a playoff team. The Philadelphia Flyers. They're my number 1 team in the East.
Yeah, I mean, Carter Hart left practice the other day in the middle of it. It's really tough to say. I agree. They were 9-1 in their last 10 heading into the, whatever you call that break. So certainly they were playing as well as anyone. Tampa, a great point that their first half of the year was slow. I think Vasilevsky was like a 900 save percentage till Christmas. And after that, He ended up in the Vezina conversation. That'll do it for a really good team. So any order you choose to go with here, I think you're fine. I just flipped him because, again, chaos.
And so in the West, did you flip them again?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
I did entirely. I'm sticking with my plan. I do think that St. Louis and Colorado are kind of head and shoulders over there. Vegas is probably closer to that group. Dallas, to me, is kind of an outlier. I don't see them as being one of, a part of that tier.
I was surprised to see them in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Edmonton, Dallas, it was kind of interchanged, very close in terms of points percentage, and they just lucked out based on when the break happened to be. So in obvious fashion with my theory, I'm just going to put them as the 1 seed because, you win a couple of games and things get weird. You never know. Let's just scramble those seeds up and have some fun with how the series match up after that.
Now you're making me feel dumb for having reasons. and stuff like that. So I'll be quick then. My number 4 seed is Dallas, just because they were the one team where I was surprised to even see them there. Vegas, I think, is one of the best teams in the league, but gosh darn it, they're in the Western Conference, and that's pretty good. St. Louis, I have as the number 2 seed in the West, despite being the reigning Stanley Cup champions, because, and producer Drew will like this, my Stanley Cup prediction heading into this season was and still is the Colorado Avalanche. So did
you just give away the whole show?
Yeah. No, I didn't. Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Listen, shut up. Okay, maybe we should move on then. So in the East, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets in round 1, or in the play-in, sorry. The Pittsburgh Penguins taking on the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Islanders taking on the Florida Panthers, and the New York Rangers taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. Which series, play-in best-of-5 series interests you the most there?
It's not just because we're in the Toronto market that I think Toronto and Columbus match up in the most interesting way. It's really the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. Columbus was the 3rd best team in the NHL at defending. Toronto doesn't defend, period, on that sentence. And Toronto's one of the best scoring teams, and Columbus was the bottom 5 team in the league that way. So very excited to see how they match up. Plus, if we were to draw up the team that people think is most designed to beat the Leafs, you draw up a team that is big, forechecks hard, is tough to get to the net against, is blocks a lot of shots. It's everything that's supposed to beat the Leafs. That's what Columbus is. So to me, that's the most exciting matchup.
And they really were the team that could. They lost Sergei Bobrovsky. They lost Artemi Panarin, who's nominated for the Hart. It's not like he's overrated or anything.
He's okay.
Eunice Korpisalo turned into an amazing goalie. He gets hurt. Seth Jones gets hurt. Josh Anderson gets hurt. And that team just kept finding a way. And you're not wrong. They've given Toronto fits over the last few years. The series that interests me the most, and I will say one more note on Toronto, if they flub this, how don't you blow it up? You're in cap hell. You can't get out of the first round. You've already fired Mike Babcock.
You're going to make any decision based on what comes out of this?
No, it's based on the last few years. It's based on win a damn cup.
Yeah.
It's based on something other than golf.
At some point, you do have to win, but you just can't make your decision based on, the old broadly gestures at the world.
Watch me. Watch me.
Yeah. Well, they may have to make some hard decisions that I think if they were on the fence about anything, this could push them onto one side or the other. But man, this is a tough year to go, that Freddie Anderson was no good. It's like, he had COVID. He lives in there. And no one has a clue what's been happening with anyone.
Yeah, that is a tough one. To me, that's the most intriguing is actually the Rangers versus the Hurricanes because I really, really thought highly of the Carolina Hurricanes. They disappointed a little bit this season. They were still pretty good. Dude, the Rangers were so good to me in the last couple months of the season, and I really, honest to goodness, and I was actually asked for the NHL's Instagram account the day before everything shut down to make a wild prediction video. And in that video, I said, I think the Rangers are going to make the playoffs. And they were...
This does not count.
They were a few points out. But I thought they would make it up. And now I'm technically half right. I just think they're a really exciting team.
Made it. I know the player stats made it. I believe they count as playoff stats from this play-on round. So
there you go.
You're definitely partially right. I'm not much of a gambler, but the odd time I'm like, well, I pay pretty close attention to this stuff. This is, I'm passionate about X, Y, or Z. The Carolina Hurricanes are 36-1 odds to win the Stanley Cup. There's I think almost a dozen teams ahead of them with lower paying odds. I love Carolina, and again, we know at the deadline, added Vatanen, added Brady Shea.
Trocheck.
Trocheck as an addition. They were already pretty good. They already defended well and can score. Basically, it's like, do you think that they can get some saves? And I think they can get average saves. I like Carolina. So I put some money on them is what I'm saying there, quietly.
And we know James Reimer's time is going to be occupied because he's bringing a flight simulator to the bubble in Toronto. He announced that. Because
the most Reimer thing ever, isn't it? Which is cool. It's awesome. That's an amazing thing to do. You have lots of time.
Just go for it, Jim. Just go for it. So, okay, winners and losers. Okay. I have the Leafs beating the Columbus Blue Jackets, and it's not just because they're my number one team, obviously. I just think the Leafs are going to come out of this, or rather enter this, playing the way they do at the beginning of the season, which is a hyper ridiculous version of the way they play usually. Absolutely no defense, but what else is new? And their scorers, Austin Matthews in particular, seems to just light everybody up at the beginning because I think before you have your systems and everything worked out, you're just relying on skill. And if it's skill versus skill, I give the Leafs the edge. If the Blue Jackets have a chance to grind them down, it's a bit of a tighter series. But I think the Leafs have the skill edge, so they win that one.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that offense is harder to create than defense is to execute. It's really difficult to score goals in the NHL. And so for that, I think if you're better rested, that plays in favor of the offense. We're looking at two teams who are well rested. And a lot of defending is kind of getting used to patterns and the flow of the game and how it moves and getting ahead of those more predictable patterns. And I think when you're not in sync, when you're not in the flow of a season, defending gets harder. I think offensive teams are going to have the advantage in the early going, which means I think Toronto is going to have the advantage. Obviously, Columbus kind of can counter a lot of the things that they do well, but I just think those guys are young. They're rested. They're a little bit older, and again, offense wins. So I have Toronto winning, but barely. I picked them in 5.
Oh, wow. Okay. Should I put a game total on it? 4. Toronto wins in 4. That's what I'm going to say.
Bold. Yeah, you can't really get too bold. There's only 5-game series, so
I know. Well, and like a team like Pittsburgh could easily get swept by a 12-seed Montreal Canadiens. Speaking of which, do you think that's going to happen? Because I don't.
No, I don't. But if you were to make the case, Montreal was second in the NHL in controlling shots in their game, so shot attempt differential. They were the second best team in the NHL, so they control a lot of the shots. And if you ask the players in the league, they have one of the best goalies in the league who's capable of playing as well as anyone. So a lot of shots, you get lucky here and there, and you have your goalie get hot. Not impossible to see it happening. Now I'm picking Pittsburgh in 3. Because I don't think that's going to happen. But there's certainly a formula there where Montreal you could see how it could happen.
Yeah, and there's this strange factor with Max Domi. He was late to join camp, and so far he's been on like the 5th line. So and he's exactly the sort of player I would love to watch in the playoffs. I think he would thrive there. But until I see him in their starting 12 for forwards, I just have a hard time believing it. Pittsburgh had a goalie go to the All-Star game this year with Tristan Jarry. So, how much of an advantage does Montreal really have in net, if at all? And then there's Matt Murray, who's, struggled at times, but kind of won back-to-back cups. I have Pittsburgh in 3 as well. Montreal will give them hell. But I think it's going to be all for naught, especially but such a key factor here is Montreal planned like they were going to miss the playoffs. And
they moved pieces. They're like, we don't need this Kovalchuk guy who's on fire.
Exactly. They look better with a guy like Kovalchuk.
Yeah.
They don't have him. Connor Sherry's back on the Penguins. Patrick Marleau's on the Penguins.
Well, and, we talked about Columbus being a team who saw a lot of injuries by man games lost. And it's not just raw man games lost. It's the impact of the guys you lose. This statistic is from actually a Twitter account, man games lost. Pittsburgh was the most devastated this season by injuries. They were without Jake Gensel, a 40-goal scorer for a chunk of time. They're finally, Patrick Hornqvist is never healthy. They're finally a healthy team. You're going to see all that they have to go for another kick at the can. That's another team that it's not impossible to be like, is this a year Pittsburgh can win the cup again? Absolutely, they're a realistic pick.
Remember that time the Penguins got Jason Zucker?
Oh, was that this year?
Yeah.
My Lord.
I know. It's wild. We'll get to them later, but the Minnesota Wild doing pretty well without Jason Zucker there. The New York Islanders against the Florida Panthers. Islanders gearing up at the trade deadline, and the Florida Panthers, they seem to be like nipping at the Leafs' heels for a couple months, and then both teams decided we don't like winning games. Let's stop.
Yeah. Florida doesn't. I said earlier in the show that Columbus doesn't score. Florida doesn't defend, and even if you want to make a joke about the Leafs not doing it, Florida was 28th in the NHL in that stat. Like around them is like the Devils and the Red Wings, and like they give up a ton of goals. Part of that is Sergei Bobrovsky, who his save percentage this year is 900 for a guy making $10 million. So that's an issue for them. The Islanders are a team who struggle because they can't score. If they're playing against a team that lets them score, you like how the Islanders look in this series. I do have them coming out on top, but I think there's a lot there in Florida. I still think it's going to take them 5 games to get through.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I do think it's going to be the Islanders. I just don't know if it's going to be 5, but they're such a strange team because Florida might be, they're in there with the Leafs, actually. They're one of the biggest Jekyll and Hyde teams in the NHL.
Yes.
When they're on, you're like, they're murderers. They're assassins. Barkov, Huberdeau, one of the most underrated players in the league. And when they're not on, they're just these, wimpy cats.
Yeah. And that happens way more often than you expect. Every year, I'm like, this is the year. Here comes Florida. Their young guys are finally there. Ooh, here comes. They got Bobrovsky this year. Yep. This is the.
I like the Islanders' intensity, and I think that's going to give them an advantage. I think they beat Florida in 4. In 4. Florida. And the last one, to me, the most intriguing play-in series, the New York Rangers taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. Strokes beard.
I just straight up Canes in 3 this one, man. I'm cutting right to the chase. Canes in 3. Canes in 3. Canes to go deep. Canes. Put on the red, white, and black over here. I love that team.
From a money standpoint, the way you pitched it, like I might go throw $50 on the Hurricanes as soon as we're done recording this.
Yeah.
I got Rangers in 3.
In 3?
In 3.
Wow. Well, I mean,
just
they can score. 5th in the NHL in goals this year, Rangers.
Yeah, like it's nothing against the Hurricanes. If the Hurricanes get through, everyone should look out because they're going to be a problem. And they're another sort of team where you're like, which version of the Hurricanes are going to show up? We've seen they can shut it down no matter who's in net. Oh my God! If they come with Rod Brindamore like intensity, I give them a great chance against anybody in the NHL. Yeah. But there's this something about the New York Rangers team that I just really like. I like everything they've done with their rebuild. Yeah. I think chemistry is going to be really important coming out of this. And one thing the Hurricanes were robbed of is they were supposed to get a dozen games of chemistry building with Vatanen and Shea and Trocheck. And didn't Vatanen like go down to an injury like his first game?
Yeah,
as a member of the Hurricanes?
And part of this was because they were without Dougie Hamilton and Brett Pesce. That's why they went out and got these guys. And now Dougie Hamilton's back. Brett Pesce could be back in the first round conceivably for Carolina if they do get through. So all of a sudden you have those guys and you have those other guys. You could have a decor of like Jacob Slavin, Pesce, Hamilton, Vatanen, Shea. I think Edmondson. They're loaded. Their D is loaded, one of the best in the league.
One thing that gives me pause is Brady Shea to the Hurricanes for a first-round pick going to the Rangers. Since it's chaos in 2020 is ridiculous anyway, the Rangers should be able to get Brady Shea back for a fee.
For the series?
For a fee.
Can Montreal get Covey back for the same fee?
Yeah. Like, okay. No, it should be different, right? Because Kovalchuk was like a third or a fourth or whatever it was. Brady Shea's a first, but the Rangers should be able to get their guy back for a fee. I just think that's fair.
I like this. Well, there was a while there during the NHL's negotiating process through all this where part of the plan was going to be, the league's going to figure out what to do about all these conditional picks, and it was going to be ideas like this. Like, I don't know, what do you think is fair? Should they get to keep them? Should they get them? I'm happy there's going to be hockey, so everyone is stuck with the players they traded for.
Like, okay, we get to keep the first round pick, but you got to give us a second or so. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting idea. Hey man, listen, we didn't think we were going to be in the playoffs, let alone playing you. We'd like our guy back. Here's a pick.
You should have to at least sit out or something. Take stats for the Rangers.
Yeah. And just go like this. And if the Hurricanes win, then okay, then you can play. So that's what we got in the East. In the West, Winnipeg taking on the Calgary Flames, our only all-Canadian matchup.
Yeah. This one is a battle of, will Connor Hellebuck still be Vezina Hellebuck, or will the break make him not that? Because if he's Vezina Hellebuck, love Winnipeg. Love Winnipeg. They were actually in the top half of the league defensively. I think they were 10th overall all goals against on the year, mostly because Hellebuck was so good. Let's say he's even average. This team gave up more shot attempts than any team in the NHL this year. They got absolutely filled in. So their defense isn't great, but their goaltending was exceptional. So if they don't get good goaltending, I don't like him. But I think he'll still be the guy he's been. Calgary kind of has been my team. You said Tampa has looked a little something's not right. Something hasn't smelled well. Calgary's been that team all year for me, where they just kind of underachieved and there hasn't been that pop. I think Winnipeg finds a way through, but I do think it'll be a good series. I have Winnipeg at 5.
It'll be
cowardly picks in 5, I know, but
no, that's fine. I was about to tell you about I just love the atmosphere in Calgary, no matter how the team's doing. Well,
yeah,
not going to get any of that, so that won't be a factor. And I actually do think, it gives them a pop in their home games. But you could say the same thing about Winnipeg, and we don't get to experience either.
Sea of dead. It's just no noise. Just
sea of empty seats.
Yes.
The Calgary Flames are a team, we were talking earlier about teams where every year we're like, here they come. It's the Hurricanes. A few years ago, it was the Blue Jackets. Here they come. How many more times are the Flames going to do this before they get that same label?
The problem is when they don't bloom like you expect them to, then it's like, well, how long till you need to plant a new flower? it's just kind of waiting for this to happen. And if it's not going to happen, that's not great. So yeah, you need to see this team find its stride. And I think they won their division a year or two ago, but that's been the ceiling for them. And I think they're going to need more than just that.
Yeah, I have the Jets winning in 4. I just feel like they've had to battle all year. They've had to make do. They got rid of an 18-year-old defenseman, and that made them look worse on paper. And yet still they found a way. I don't think it was all Hellebuck, but if we're going to do an MVG, a most valuable goalie, it would most certainly be him. I like the Jets taking the Flames in that one. Very interesting series, or at least it was more interesting, I would say, a few months ago. The Edmonton Oilers against the Chicago Blackhawks. I thought the Blackhawks had the potential to give the Oilers fits, but they don't have Robin Lehner anymore, and now we find out Corey Crawford's not going to be in it. I legitimately don't know who their third goalie is.
Well, you put me on the spot. Yeah, that's who it is.
It is.
Yep. I checked.
Like we all knew.
I checked their goalie position the other day to see what was going on there at the backup position. There's like 6 names, and I was like, yes, Subban's kind of the guy. But yeah, that changes things for me, because part of the reason that Chicago even held their head up above water at all this year in the NHL was that they got goaltending. They got the 7th best combined save percentage in the NHL this season, so that kind of saved them, because they gave up 1 billion shots and 1 billion chances. Without good goaltending, it ain't there for them. I had Edmonton, and this was my drama, is that I had them in 5 because I thought Chicago was really going to drag this thing out. I'm going to dial that back now. If it's not Corey Crawford, it's 3 or 4. So yeah, Oilers in that one.
I have Oilers in 3. Yeah. I'm not going to even give them the or 4 out of that. A very interesting series. I don't know if I'm saying that for all of them, but I just like hockey. I'm sorry. The Vancouver Canucks taking on the Minnesota Wild. It's what made it very interesting for me was as soon as this was announced, there was like an immediate debate over whether the Canucks should actually try to go for the first overall pick. I don't know. I like both teams though. I do. Minnesota, I didn't think I would like them, but they get a new head coach, which we all thought was a huge error, and they turned into one of the hottest teams in the league. And Vancouver, I just feel like, if they have Brock Besser and Tyler Toffoli, who was supposed to be the Brock Besser replacement, Jakob Markstrom had a very underrated season. Elias Pettersson is just ridiculous.
Yeah. No, here's the thing. Minnesota needs Lafreniere more than anyone in the NHL. For the love of God, can they get a great player? Just one. Just some reason to turn on a Minnesota Wild game so they're not finishing 8th or 9th in the conference every year, or 10th or 11th or whatever. They're just so mushy middle all the time. I would love to see that happen for them. There's tons to like about that team. Lots of good players, but every one of them is a computer-generated player who is pretty good and not awful, and I just want to see them have someone that's like, tune in to watch them. When you lay out the two teams statistically, the Canucks score more, defend better penalty kill, better power play, and better goaltending. Barely in many of those categories, but they're kind of better at everything. Minnesota needs that top pick. I think everyone should be rooting for Vancouver in this series, and I think Vancouver will win. I have them winning in 4.
I like Vancouver's goaltending a little bit better, and if you need one player to take over a series, I can't wait to see playoff Pettersson.
Yeah, Pettersson, Besser, Quinn Hughes. There's tons of a lot of exciting players, at least in Vancouver. That's something Minnesota would love to have.
Yeah, I'll give it to the Canucks in 4 there. So we have the Nashville Predators taking on the Arizona Coyotes in the West. I'm going to take a step back from what I've been saying. The least interesting.
Yeah, it is, and this is terrible to say for everyone involved, but it is the least interesting. I mean, it's whether you want it to be star power, or teams that are great, or teams that are awful, or reasons to be excited. Definitely, they lack those things. However, I think Arizona is a team that could do some surprising things. Taylor Hall is good. Phil Kessel is good. They have arguably the best goaltending tandem in the NHL that was hurt at times this year. Potential Vezina guy there in Darcy Kemper, and Antti Ranta was awesome after. Jacob Chikrin and OEL, these guys can defend. I could see them turning things on. And much like I said about Vancouver, Minnesota, every category, Arizona is ahead of Nashville. I see Nashville, I put out a poll, was picked by the public to win like 70% to 30%. I like Arizona. I like them in 4.
Remember that time that the Arizona Coyotes got Taylor Hall?
I do remember that one. That was, yes, that was this year for sure.
Yeah, it is a tough one because I feel like the Coyotes got a raw deal, especially Taylor Hall. Like, oh, look, they got worse after they got Taylor Hall. But their Vezina caliber goaltender went down. Darcy Kemper over the last 2 years has been the most underrated goalie in the NHL, probably bar none.
Yeah.
I still have Nashville beating Arizona just because they've been there, but they are – remember I said Calgary, you're in danger of being the – when are they going to do this thing in the West? That's Nashville currently right now. I'm tired of every year being like, maybe they – and now my brain automatically goes to no, they won't. So
yeah.
I have them winning in 5. I think they'll win against Arizona, but spoiler alert for the next round, I don't predict much more.
We had David Poyle on Hockey Central, and he was like, yeah, it's just weird that every single one of our good players is in a down year all at the same time. It's like, yeah, he must just be like exploding in his own brain about how that can happen. But yeah, disappointment all around in Nashville so far this year.
Yes. So now, very interesting. Well, God, my crutch. So now, quite intriguing. We're going to have different seeds based on your notes and my notes, because if I predicted one team different than you, my bracket's going to be completely different than yours. So do you want to lay out what your bracket is in the East?
Yes. Yes, I do. So my playoff, my first round of the official playoffs, I'm left with Philadelphia, Toronto, Tampa Bay Islanders, Washington, Carolina, Boston, Pittsburgh. From there, moving through in the East, I got Toronto beating Philly. Why not? Why not?
What?
I do. I know you love Philly. I think they were on a nice little run when we went into the break, but I look at their roster and I don't think they're that special. I think they're good. I think they're very good, but I think that Toronto for the forward group really is special. Nick Robertson's going to be interesting to see if he can make a difference on the third line. But there's just they're going to go score so many goals if they can get decent goaltending. I like them, so I have Toronto moving on. Tampa beating the Islanders. Carolina beating the Capitals. They beat them in 7 last year, and I think they've made some improvements. And Pittsburgh beating Boston. Again, a healthy Pittsburgh team, their spot in the standings was not indicative of the true team that they have there. Tampa Bay is going to beat Toronto because they're a better hockey team. And the next series...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. How do you feel there, Justin?
Yeah. And the other series is Pittsburgh, Carolina. And just to really drive home how much I like Carolina, I picked them. At this point, you're just making a statement about who you really like. And I really like that Carolina team. Tampa Bay would emerge from that final to go to the Stanley Cup final. So I have Tampa Bay in the Stanley Cup final.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Now, How about your West there?
Drive it back to the West. I'm left with Dallas playing Arizona in the first round of the playoffs, Vegas and Winnipeg, Colorado and Vancouver, St. Louis and Edmonton are my matchups. I have Arizona beating Dallas, Vegas beating Winnipeg, Colorado beating Vancouver, and St. Louis beating Edmonton. You know what's funny about this is every time you set out to look at a playoff bracket, it's like, I don't think St. Louis is going to win the cup. St. Louis is okay. It's an okay team. And then every matchup, you're like, well, they're not better than St. Louis. They're not better than St. Louis. St. Louis, man.
Well, that's
Stanley Cup champs.
Because you've had about 25, 30 years of practice of looking at St. Louis really good in the standings and going, yeah, but they're not going to win.
Yeah. And now
it wasn't until this past year that they ruined it.
It's like, right. Okay, that team actually can win. So my conference final matchups would be St. Louis versus Arizona. Not close. And Vegas versus Colorado. I love Colorado. I can't imagine anyone would pick them to win the Stanley Cup, but I personally love Colorado. I think they're a very good team. So that leaves us with St. Louis and Colorado in the play-in to go to the Stanley Cup final, and I do have Colorado going through. So I have a Colorado, Tampa Bay, Stanley Cup final. How fast is that? How fast would that series be?
Incredibly fast. Let's see if I can beat it, because there's one thing that I'm known for, and it's being concise. So I have, obviously my seeds are different than yours. I have the Philadelphia Flyers taking on the New York Rangers. For some reason, I love the Rangers. but I have the Flyers beating them in 7. Boston is going to take on, guess who?
Oh,
Toronto!
No.
And I'm going to make people very upset. Toronto's going to beat them in 6. Because, yep, I said it. I didn't even say 7. I said they're going to beat them in 6. The Leafs having home ice advantage the whole time. That's going to be awful fun.
Elite.
The fact that it's actually their own home ice. The skill factor doesn't change from what I talked about before, and they should have beat the Bruins the year before, but they didn't. They very didn't. Game 7 was the worst game of that series, so the only way to beat them is to avoid that game. The Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the New York Islanders. I do like the Islanders' tenacity, but I think Tampa's a better hockey team, like Justin said. I have Tampa in 6. And Washington versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh let Washington win once, and they said enough of that nonsense. They will beat them in 6, which means my final 4 in the East. The Philadelphia Flyers taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. I am not as optimistic as one Justin Bourne. I have the Flyers beating the Leafs. That Cinderella run will end in 6 games. The Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I like the Penguins too. I have them winning in 6, which means, and this would be fantastic viewing, my Eastern Conference final is the Philadelphia Flyers taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think it's going to be an absolute slugfest war. I'm looking down at my notes, and just through our conversation, I'm thinking about changing my pick because I have Philadelphia in the Cup final.
Do it.
I think I'm going to change it.
Wow, an audible at the line of scrimmage here. All right.
Calling an audible. Pittsburgh Penguins in 7. I'm changing my pick. I'm changing my pick. In the West, Colorado taking on Winnipeg. Love you, Winnipeg. Sorry, you lose in 5. Colorado takes that. St. Louis Blues taking on the Vancouver Canucks. Again, it's the reigning Stanley Cup champions. Sorry, Vancouver. They win in 6. Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Nashville Predators. By Nashville, I give you 1 game, you lose in 5. And Dallas taking on Edmonton. Dallas is going to be very annoying for Edmonton, but I think Edmonton ultimately bulldozes through that and beats them in 6. So, next round, Colorado taking on the Edmonton Oilers. I think that's going to be another slugfest. I have Colorado persevering in that one. I just think they're deeper, winning in 7. And St. Louis versus Vegas. Who's not watching that?
That's a great series.
That's a great series, too. I have that going 7 as well, and I give St. Louis the edge. Meaning, the Western Conference Final is going to be the Colorado Avalanche against the St. Louis Blues. Did you not have the same one?
No, I had the same one.
There you go. No, stupid. Oh, wait, yes.
Yes,
I have Colorado beating the St. Louis Blues in 7, which means my Stanley Cup final is the Philadelphia Flyers, delete, Pittsburgh Penguins taking on the Colorado Avalanche. And you have the Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the Colorado Avalanche?
Yeah.
So through all this, we both have the Avs.
Yeah. I think that's a worthwhile pick, man. They're held. That's another team that was killed by injuries all year that is suddenly, fully loaded and ready to go. I have, for my Stanley Cup champion, from swept in the first round last year to Stanley Cup champion, Tampa Bay Lightning. I always feel better about my pick when I feel like my pick is actually the best team. Sometimes you overthink it and say, well, I could see. I like Tampa. I think that's the best hockey team. I like picking them to win the Cup.
Well, and they got Barclay Goodrow now, so.
Wow, you can't go wrong now.
You can't.
Lock it in.
Couldn't possibly. Guaranteed he opens the play-in with his first goal as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yeah. This was my pick in the preseason video I made with producer Drew, although my Stanley Cup final at the time was Colorado taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. Maybe I should stop picking on them. I don't know. Is that like some psychological thing?
There seems to be some pent-up frustration there from something.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, the biggest house in Oshawa belongs to my therapist. I am going to say the 2020 COVID Cup, Stanley Cup, whatever you want to call it, Cup champions will be the Colorado Avalanche, persevering in 6 over the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Do you like picking a team to win a Stanley Cup and then being like, Pavel Francouz or Philip Grubauer? That's what I'm doing here. Is that?
No, I know but if you look at their numbers, they're great.
I know.
Francouz is one of those names where you always go, I don't even know how to say it. And then you look at his numbers and you're like, oh, he's better than my goalie.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I know. They've been awesome. Absolutely. I feel pretty comfortable with my Vasilevsky pick. I feel like, there's a bit longer track record, but I understand that the numbers in Colorado have been very good. There's no reason to be a hater over here. So I'm sure they'll be fine.
No reason, but you're going to do it anyway. Well,
yeah.
And their deadline was pretty mum. They spent a 4th round pick to get Vlad Nemesnikov because their deadline acquisitions were the members of their hockey team that were already out.
Well, and they also pillaged the Toronto Maple Leafs preseason, which helped their roster. Oh, no, I wasn't supposed to mention that. I wasn't supposed to.
Nazem Kadri, are we going to have him on the wing for fun or second line center? Who knows? We're the Colorado Avalanche, and we're just having a great time. Drew laughing in the background. Shut up, Drew. So you have the Tampa Bay Lightning win the 2020 Stanley Cup. The Colorado Avalanche have always struggled with it, winning the Stanley Cup. And
there should be a syllable limit on names.
Right?
Yeah. Seattle Kraken works. That's nice and concise.
Ooh, I am still upset that they are not the 25th surprise playoff team.
Wouldn't that be amazing? It's like a reality TV show where someone comes back to the island and they're like, and also Seattle's in. Be great.
Yeah, and it's just like Joe Thornton, Ryan Getzlaf, and Jack Eichel walking out looking all mad. It's just all the players from the 7 teams that didn't make it.
Be like Team Europe in the World Cup. It'd be like, wow, they're not a real team, but we'll pretend anyway.
And then they made it to within 2 wins of the World Cup.
There you go.
So how are you feeling now that you've gotten this all out of your system?
I feel good. I feel like I needed to talk myself through a lot of this because I hadn't really thought about much of it. But it's kind of like priming the engine before starting it here. Like I feel like this is kind of the official kickoff. I'm prepared. I'm ready.
I'm ready to be right all the way through. And watch the Carolina Hurricanes get swept in the play-in. No, now I'm starting to feel stupid and I'm probably going to go drop $50 on them. So, folks, leave a comment in the comment box down below or leave several paragraphs as to why we are wrong or maybe just the thumbs up saying that we're right. I am Steve Dangle. He is Justin Bourne. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell your friends. Colorado, catch the fever.
Hey, Steve.